OceanLink Pulse. It's a new hardware platform for the Fisker Ocean that enables a completely new way to interact with your car. Full screen navigation, system information, music apps, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and so much more. It's built openly by the owner community, and Pulse is designed to be a powerful, stable, and continuously evolving platform. The Fisker Owners Association's objective is to support owner experience and confidence, and we welcome viable solutions from anywhere. Pulse is not an FOA product, but we believe it enhances the experience of the vehicle. And because of this, we'll do what we can to see owners get the most out of it. So inside the box from EV Play, there's a lot more than just the Pulse unit itself, and we're going to go through every cable and every part of the shipment that will arrive at your doorstep. When you look at the Pulse unit, the first thing to get familiar with are all of the ports on the unit itself. So when you turn it to the side, you'll see two ports that are going to connect to the ICC and the infotainment screen. There's also a power and LCD control port, and there's a CAN bus with white, green, yellow, and brown. The other CAN port is a CAN FD port, and it's unused, but will be enabled in the future. Turning the Pulse to its side, there's a wired Android Auto and Apple CarPlay port, followed by 3 regular USB ports and 1 development port and an Ethernet port, as well as a microphone port on the other side. Next, let's go through some of the cables that come with the Pulse. And going one by one through each pack, we'll start first with the power cable and the ICC Cable 28. And we'll go through in much more detail what each of these does. This is the CAN bus extension cable, followed by the CAN bus spider port cable, and the cable 28 connector and ICC and Fuse RF22 cable. Next, you'll see what connects to the ICC and infotainment screen, and you'll notice the red and black ends of this cable that connect to the side of the Pulse that we looked at previously. If we open up the black pouch, we'll see the modem and a USB-C cable for powering the modem, as well as a microphone for listening to commands on the Pulse as you drive. And with that, we're ready to start the installation. So follow the steps one by one, and let's go. So some of the tools you're going to want to have ready for this project, starting with plastic pry bars. You'll need several different sizes of these for removing plastic molding around the center console and also to get access to the fuse box. You'll also want to make sure when you're accessing the fuse box that you have a fuse removal tool, or you can also use a set of pliers for the same purpose. Another note on the plastic pry bars is that having a metal one will work a lot better for removing the HVAC duct. We used a plastic pry bar and also used pliers to remove 2 pins, but it would be a lot easier with a metal pry bar. You'll also want to make sure you have a Torx screwdriver with a T20 bit for removing the panel on the driver's side where the fuse box is located, and also to access the spider port. And finally, you're going to want to make sure that you have socket wrenches with 10mm sockets, as well as a magnetic 10mm for removing the 10mm bolts that are securing the console. You'll notice that we have 2 different sizes. One needs to be a little bit smaller so that you can access some of the bolts in the center console where you don't have as much room to work with. And lastly, if you have some work gloves, it's always good to have those. Part 2, center console removal. The first thing you need to do is slide the seat all the way back and up so that you can access this area here of the console, and you'll need to pry off this plastic cover that's in front of the bolts. After you've done that, you'll now want to move the seat forward all the way and back just a little bit until you see that this triangle piece is just to the side of the 10mm bolt that you want to remove with your socket wrench screwdriver. If you align this triangle plastic piece looking from top down or from under the seat, you'll be able to see where it needs to be positioned just like this so that you can reach through and unscrew both of those 10mm bolts. By aligning the triangle piece this way, you should be able to reach through and remove them with no problem. Yep. After both sides have been removed, now let's move on with the plastic pry bar to removing some of the plastic molding by the front of the center console on either side. We'll start here on the driver's side. You should do the same on the passenger side. Remove these pieces to gain access to 2 more 10mm bolts that you can easily remove with your 10mm socket. On the other side, it's the same exact procedure, removing this plastic part first, followed by a 10mm bolt. And after these have been removed, you can now remove the rubber protective casing underneath the center console. And by taking that out, you'll see where you have access to 2 more 10mm bolts that you'll need a shorter tool to reach. Take these out on both sides. You now have a total of 6 bolts that you've removed. Next, you want to take out the rubber cover that protects the charging mats. Take this out, and you'll need to get your plastic pry bar ready to remove this piece that's at the back of the center console. This is an easy one to pop out, and you'll see 2 more bolts that will be removed, 1 on either side, bringing us to a total of 8 bolts that have been removed at this point. With these 8 bolts removed, we can now slide the center console back, and we found it a lot easier once you've slid the console back to disconnect the cabling that connects the center console. This allows you to slide the console back even further out of the way and gives you a really clear path into the area that we need to work in. So we highly recommend disconnecting those cables. When you slide back the center console all the way, you'll see that we have access to an area that is covered by an HVAC vent. This HVAC vent needs to be removed so that we can really get access to the ICC. You'll want to use ideally a metal pry bar. In this instance, it's a lot easier to remove these pins, but we were able to use a plastic pry bar and followed up the job once we had the pins out a little bit with a pair of pliers, and that was sufficient for us to be able to remove these 2 pins. They're difficult, but you'll get them. And at this point, you can now put the HVAC tube aside, and we'll continue in this area after we complete one more step. Part 3, fuse box and pull RF22. You can follow a great tutorial from Mountain Ranger on how to access the driver's side fuse box. You'll want to remove the bottom floor piece along with the weather stripping and the 2 plastic side piece panels, as well as 1 T20 screw on the side, and you'll follow that up by removing 4 more screws underneath in the foot area where you'll want to take out all 4 T20 screws so that you have the ability to remove this panel by popping it out and gaining access to where the fuse box area is. With all those 5 screws out, it's simply a procedure of just pulling this panel down, and you want to be careful with the NFC reader, but you can see in the area where we're demonstrating here exactly where the 15 amp fuse is located. Quick side note for owners in the UK, this is the location of the fuse that you need to pull on your fuse box, and you can follow the rest of the procedure from here. If you previously put in the T-box reset switch, it's the same exact fuse, and it's a 15 amp blue fuse. Part 4, connect to the ICC. With the fuse taken out of your fuse box, you can now safely work on the ICC. You'll want to look inside the area where you removed the HVAC tube, and you'll see a green cable that's currently connected to your ICC. We need to unplug this green cable, and what we found as a trick for pressing the release button underneath the green cable was using a small piece of zip tie or other small piece of plastic taped to your finger so that you can press up on the tab that's underneath this green cable that's connected to the ICC. If you have access to a 3D printer, there's a really great ICC HSD connector removal tool made by a member of the community. I'll put the link to that in the description of this video below. By pressing that tab, it'll slide out and you can leave this cable disconnected for the time being. Now going back to looking at the pulse, as we talked about at the start of the video, we have 2 cables with different colored ends on them. One is reddish maroon and one is black. They all connect here to the pulse, just like this. On the other end of these cables is a green connector on both sides, and what we have is a male and female, this is the male and that's the female end of these cables. The male end is going to connect directly to the ICC, and the female end is going to connect to the cable that was connected to the ICC. So taking the male end of the green connector, reach under and connect this one to the ICC and listen for this sound. When it connects properly, you'll hear that click sound. If you don't hear that click sound, it means it's not fully secured and you'll have problems later with the pulse. Make sure that you've connected this female end to the cable that was connected to the ICC and listen for a similar click to make sure that it's fully secured. We can set these cables to the side. Next, we're going to be looking for two connectors that are on the left side of the ICC, and we found it easier to disconnect both of them to get access to the furthest one on the left. We'll be referencing Maj's tutorial video for this portion of the install because he had much better lighting than we were able to produce for explaining which cable it is that you need to find. So looking at this connector, on the bottom row, on the very bottom right side, you'll see that the second cable from the right, if you're counting from the right side, it's one over. This is cable 28, and this is the one that we're going to be working with. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be tying into this cable using this pink and gray connector from these wires that we saw earlier in the video. We decided to cut back some of the plastic housing around the wire to get a very secure connection. You may not decide to do that. We found it to be useful. But you'll unscrew the gray cap and you'll see that the other side has a pin that will go into the wire. So by putting the gray connector on first and then screwing in the pink side, you'll notice that the pin will go right into the wire. And because we stripped back some of that housing, we're sure that that pin is connecting directly to the wire itself and not getting stuck on the plastic. You can now reinsert both of these connectors back into the ICC, and you'll set the blue wire aside for now. All right, now I've got those connected. Part 5, spider port connection. If you've never accessed your spider port before, you're going to need to reach up with almost an elbow's length reach to find your spider port. You'll feel it with your hand. It's a circular connector. And as you pull it down, you'll see that the spider port itself has numbers. It's labeled so that each port has a corresponding number. This is what we're going to be using for this part of the tutorial. You'll want to inspect the spider port carefully and get familiar where some numbers are because that's where we're going to be connecting these cables into. Looking at the spider port, if you identify where 11, 12, 13, and 14 are located, let's start with port 11. This is the black cable. We're going to be pushing this pin into spot number 11, and we'll be following that with blue in number 12, white in number 13, and red in number 14. You'll want to make sure that you pause the video at this part so that you really make sure that each color and each pin is carefully and securely connected into those 4 spots. And as an optional final step, there's a spider port cap made by a member of the community that you can download and print with a 3D printer. I'll include the link to that in the description below. Part 6, fuse RF22 connection. So you have your fuse removed from the previous step. Now what we need to do is take that same 15 amp fuse and insert it into the fuse tool that has been provided as part of this kit. It's connected to a red wire, and what we're doing is we're inserting the 15 amp fuse alongside the 5 amp fuse that was included with it. It's a little bit tricky to push it in, but once you've got it in, you'll be able to take this, and with the fuses pointing up, you'll want to insert that into slot 7 from the bottom, the same place where you removed the 15 amp fuse before. Make sure that that's securely inserted. One thing to note at this stage is that unless you've disconnected your 12 volt battery, this red wire is now live, so you'll want to wrap it with tape if you want to hide the wire behind some of the plastic housing like we did here. Otherwise, if it touches anything metal, it will spark. Part 7, connect everything. We're going to start with that red wire and connect it as shown here. You'll want to pull back the red tab and insert it. And you're going to do the exact same procedure with the blue wire. You want to make sure that both of these are very snug and make sure that they don't come out when you tug on them. These two are power and the LCD screen. With these two securely connected, we can now move on to the cables that connect the screen and the ICC. Start with the red and insert it carefully but securely, and make sure that you hear a click sound as it's completely inserted, but also be gentle not to push too hard on the board inside. We found that both cables took a little bit of time to get completely inserted correctly, but take your time, make sure that they're inserted, and you can then move on to connecting the LCD and power connector. This one you'll have to reach inside a little bit in the space here, and as you press it in, you'll notice that a red light inside on the board turns on. That's a good sign. That means that the pulse is powering up. So with that connected, you can then take the extension cable from the CAN bus and make sure that you're connecting it to the port that has colors yellow, green, brown, and white. The other CAN FD port is unused for now, so this is the one that we need to connect it to. You'll plug it in here, and at this point you've connected the major cables that we need in order to test the unit. We also reconnect the cables to the center console at this stage so that we can turn on the car and start testing the pulse before we start putting everything back together to reassemble the car. At this stage, you should see the legal agreement from the pulse pop up on screen. This is a very good sign. This means that things are working. You're going to need to scroll through and accept the terms for this legal agreement. Take your time and read it. It's important. But as you click through and move on to the next step, you'll want to quickly create your profile name and move on to check the pulse system. This step will tell you if things are working, and you'll be able to see whether there's any errors detected. In our case, everything connected properly, so we were able to proceed. And from this point forward, you're selecting your measurement units and setting up your pulse the way you'd like it to be set up. You will need to connect Wi-Fi at this stage before connecting a modem. We're going to go into more detail about how to use the modem in a separate tutorial, but for right now, the most important thing would be to connect the pulse to a Wi-Fi hotspot and see if there are any available updates that you can install on the pulse so that you're using the most recent version. A few final thoughts on the placement of the microphone. For example, you could place it here where I have. It seems to work pretty well, and you can have the cable extend from the microphone along the top, behind the visor, and down. It's very easy to connect it to the pulse there. And for the modem, I found a place behind a screen. You might find a better place for it, but I liked having it out of the way here. Let us know what other ideas you have in the comments below, and thanks for watching.